She doesn't speak. She just opens her mouth, and you freeze. Sound. Low. Soft. Slow. Like it's caressing. Not your ears. You don't yet know who she is. But you already can't look at anything but her lips. They don't call, they wait. And you're already ready to step closer. Tonight you'll find out why men abandoned everything for a single glance. Why the sound of her breath made them row toward a place where nothing else mattered. Why one turn of her head could linger in memory longer than a real night. You think you can resist? Watch to the end. But don't be surprised if you're left with this feeling. Long after the video stops. Her voice wasn't sound. It was touch. But not to the body, to their will. A man could be strong, experienced, confident. He could know what he's doing, where he's sailing, why he lives. But when that voice sounded, everything stopped mattering. He didn't hear words. He couldn't make out the language. He just surrendered. The siren's sound didn't strike the ears. It pierced deeper. It clung to inner muscles, to the spine, to their throat. It made fingers unclench breath falter their heart skip a beat She didn't sing, she poured herself into his perception. And the man walked. Not because he wanted to. But because he could no longer not walk He forgot his name. He didn't recall where the shore was. He didn't even feel fear. Because in that moment, his whole body was consumed by one thing. The reaction to the sound No one knows exactly how it sounded. They said it was like a flute. Like breath through water. Like a mother's and a lover's voice at once. Like warm wind brushing the neck, leaving no trace. Like something you want to hear just a bit more Even if it might drive you mad. The siren didn't pull with her hands. She pulled inward Something in the man responded. As if her note matched something in his spine. And that something no longer obeyed reason. He reached out. On his own. Without command. Without purpose. Because the sound became the only thing he wanted to feel again They weren't women. But they weren't fish either. They were something assembled by the principle of desire Half body. Half wave. The upper part, too human. To not dream of touching. The lower part, too vague. To know what would happen if you got closer. The siren didn't stand, she moved Always. Even at rest, something in her flowed, shimmered. As if her body wasn't flesh. But a liquid form of temptation You saw shoulders. The curve of her neck. A rib cage rising with breath. And suddenly realized. Beyond that, only a guess Her movements weren't steps. They were waves Where every turn felt like an invitation. But not overt. The kind that makes you imagine. Makes you excite yourself with your own thoughts. They didn't hide themselves. Yet you still didn't know what you were seeing. Because a siren's body wasn't precise. It was made to provoke a need to complete the image Like an artist painted only half a body. And said, finish it yourself. In your mind. Her tail wasn't a fish's tail. It was an extension of a thigh. It moved like a promise. Curved like breath. And when she sank into the water, the man didn't see where, but knew he wanted to go there too. Her body's form was against logic, but perfectly matched fantasy. She was unattainable. And that's what excited more than nakedness. A siren wasn't a body. She was the desire for a body. They never touched first. Sirens never came close. They waited. They let the man reach out. Let him think it was his choice, though it was already decided. Contact with a siren isn't about flesh. It's about the tremor when your fingers draw near. And can't tell, is it water or skin? You dream of touching, but don't know what happens when you do. Sometimes it happened. He reached her. His hand met her skin, and it became clear. This wasn't touch. It was defeat. Smooth. Warm. As if not real, but alive. In that moment, the man forgot why he reached out. He didn't want to embrace. He just wanted to stay in that touch forever. Sirens barely moved when touched. They allowed it. And in that stillness was something strangely arousing. As if all the power was now in the man's hand. When really, it was the opposite. Some legends say that at the first touch of a siren, a man stopped feeling other bodies. Women after her seemed dull, cold, too real. Because in that one touch was an energy that never repeated anywhere else. They weren't soft or cold. They were like the surface of a dream. You touch, and don't know if you're awake. And you want to stay where it's unclear, but endlessly pleasant. To touch a siren is to understand that you don't always need an answer. Sometimes one moment is enough. One that never lets you go for the rest of your life. Men always looked at her lips. Even when they tried to look into her eyes. Even when they sang songs about her voice. Because that's where something began, something that made their breath catch. The siren didn't speak. And she certainly didn't explain. But when she parted her lips, the call began. Not sharp. Not commanding. But pulling, wet, warm. He didn't hear words. He only felt that the sound didn't come from her mouth. It came from somewhere closer to the stomach. It slid along the spine. It touched inside, not outside. The siren's lips were soft. But not for caresses. They didn't kiss. They promised. Promised something impossible to describe. And that's what drove men to despair. She could simply run her tongue over her lower lip. Without looking. And the man would already forget why he was holding an oar. He'd drop it. He'd row to her with his hands. He wanted to be closer. He didn't know why, but he knew there was no other way. Her lips didn't move much. They only parted slightly. Sometimes they glistened wetly. Sometimes they trembled with breath, as if she were about to say something. But she didn't speak. And that was the scariest thing of all. Because the man started to imagine. He heard in himself what he wanted to hear from her. He filled the silence with his own desire. And became a hostage to that quiet. The siren didn't kiss. She called. And you didn't walk toward a body. You walked toward what those lips might have said. But didn't. He knew. He always knew that sailing toward her meant he wouldn't return. Everyone knew. Stories spread across the seas like a storm. But they sailed anyway. At first, from a distance. Then, closer. Then, too close to turn back. And when the water began to smell of salt and something sweet, the man no longer felt fear. He felt heat. He felt something tightening inside, not from fear, but from anticipation. Because death by a siren wasn't cruel. She didn't tear flesh. She didn't attack. She just looked, sang, breathed. And he reached out. Not because he wanted to die, but because living without that moment would be worse. Death became not an end, but a climax. Something you couldn't stop. Something almost pleasant to accept. Some tried to resist. They plugged their ears, turned away. But then one glance, and their hands moved to their bodies. They rode, unheeding. They swam until their strength gave out. And then, they fell. They say they died with open eyes. Not from horror, but because they didn't want to close their gaze. Because, even dying, they still wanted to see her. Until the last moment. Until they fainted. Until they dissolved. The siren didn't kill. She was just there. And that was enough. For a man to stop wanting anything else. Her voice wasn't a gift of nature. It was a result. Long, precise. Almost sacred. Sirens didn't just sing, they prepared for it. Every morning began not with sleep, but with breathing. Deep, slow, warm. The kind that didn't just sound, but penetrated. So the sound didn't echo, but passed through another. They rubbed their throats with infusions. They stayed silent for days to preserve their timbre. They breathed through petals, absorbing their scent so it lingered in their voice. They knew their way breath sounded mattered more than any word. The way their throat trembled could stir in a man a desire he himself didn't understand. But it wasn't just their voice. The body was an instrument too. They prepared it like a temple. Skin was anointed with oils. Movements honed to the slightest curve. A turn of the head, not random. A lift of the hand, not improvised. Everything was crafted. So a man felt that every move was made as if underscored just for him underscore. They didn't look in mirrors. They looked at the water. At how their bodies reflected and distorted. And they taught themselves to move. To be what men wanted to see, but could never fully describe. Sirens were a ritual. From the first breath to the last glance. That's why men couldn't resist them. Because everything they felt wasn't chance, but the result of preparation. Tuned like a harp, sounding only at the right moment. The siren never left. She just changed her skin. Left the sea behind, and stayed within us. On ancient frescoes, they painted her on the edge. Between woman and something else. Shoulders bare, hair like a wave. Chest calm but taut. Below, uncertainty. Where the body doesn't end, but fantasy begins. Sculptors carved her with lips parted. Not in a scream. In a breath. As if she's about to speak, but won't. And you'll wait. And in that waiting lies all the tension. Over the centuries, they stopped being half fish. But they remained in every feminine form. Where movement is slower than it should be. Where a voice sounds lower than expected. Where a glance lingers just longer than allowed. A woman emerging from the water. With hair clinging to her skin. With droplets sliding down her shoulders. You don't think she was just swimming. You think she's one of them. A film. An ad. A music video. She sits on the edge, dips her foot in the water. Tilts her head, and the whole world around her freezes. Because everyone recognizes the gesture. The sound. The movement. The pose. It's her. Even if no one says it out loud. The siren lives in those who know how to be quiet. Who don't call, but simply look. who don't bear themselves, but leave just enough for your eyes to stay. She's in the language, in words whispered in your ear, in silk gliding over skin, in songs where a woman's voice does something to you, and you can't quite grasp what it is. She stayed because no one wanted to lose her, even those who feared her. She doesn't bargain, doesn't persuade, doesn't try to be understood. She simply exists. And that's enough for everything inside to reach for her. Not with the body, with attention. Not with the mind, with sensation. You don't know why you're looking at her, but you can't turn away. You don't know what you're thinking, but every thought is no longer yours. She's in you. The siren does nothing overtly, but you feel everything. You feel the rhythm rising in your chest. Your palms grow warm. Everything else disappears. Only she remains. She doesn't call you by name, but it feels like you hear yours. Only softer. Only deeper. Not with your ears, with your body. The siren gives no signs. But that's exactly why you start seeing everything in her. What you want. What you fear. What you can't forget. She doesn't come closer. You take the step. You lean in. You lose your balance. And there you are, standing on the edge, looking at her. And you realize there's no going back. And you don't even want to. Because even if she never touches you, you've already touched her within yourself. And that's enough for no other encounter to ever be the same. Now you know who they are. Those who don't call, but we go to them anyway. Those whose silence rings louder than any shout. Those we fear to remember, but can't forget. If you've watched this far, you've felt it. You want to know more. More stories like this. More women who make you want to drown. Subscribe. Like. Leave a comment if you're ready for the next encounter. And I'll be back. With a new legend. With a new heroine. With a new story that can't be told aloud, but can be felt. See you soon. Just don't promise yourself you'll resist next time.